Well, welcome to episode 11 of 4th and Long. It's an exciting edition here. We have a guest speaker in the house, GM Clueless, aka Alan, and of course Randy's here with myself. We're looking into what was week 12 and looking into week 13, Baker's Dozen. Let's start with the newcomer, Alan. How you doing, and what do you want? Are you excited for this or what?
Yeah, thanks for having me, boys.
Yeah, we're looking forward to seeing how this shapes out. This is our first one. There's going to be a bit more feedback here, guys, just because of our technology or lack thereof. But of course, we have Randy on speaker as always, who's probably coming in clear right about now. Randy, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Pretty excited to have a three-way going with this thing.
All right. Well, hey, let's. This is gonna get dicey here for a little bit, I'm sure. So let's start off with matchup of the week. I'm going to give this one to Randy. Randy, what was your matchup of the week for week 12?
Well, my matchup of the week was the Bears versus Shelley told me to. Was obviously a high-scoring matchup, especially with a lot of there were a few mismatches this week as well. It was a reasonably close game. I especially like how it was well matched at almost every position. The quarterbacks were within 5 points. The four running backs were also very close. The flex position was very close. The kickers were all close. So when you've got all those positions pretty much canceling each other out, it makes for an interesting matchup. The one big advantage was Shelley told me to had a much better performances from their wide receivers, and I think I've probably mentioned Corey and the Bears have been having trouble with their wide receivers lately, and this was no exception this week, as Evans and Julio combined for 24 points, while Landry and Miller combined for only 7. So that's how that game shook out, but I like how it was close and it was reasonably high scoring, and that's why it's my pick for game of the week.
Okay, yeah. Alan, we'll just jump right to you. What did you have a game of the week or thoughts on that?
I kind of agree with Randy on the game of the week. The rest of the matchups are they're kind of meh. Like, people were getting blown out of the water, or they were all just low-scoring affairs. So I would say that Shelley told me to into Bears was probably the best matchup of the week for me too.
Yeah, and you know what? We'll just we're kicking this thing off with 3 agreements here. That was the matchup for me too. I mean, Selby made things very interesting with a playoff push here. Fournette finally did something for him. He hasn't really had that all year. And now, of course, the downside to his good performance is he got a little chippy and now he's going to be suspended. So that kind of doesn't bode well, but bode well at the right time, if you know what I mean. I found it very interesting, though, guys, that he decided to play Jordan Reed over Ebron. I'm not sure if you guys picked up on that. Ebron for Indy, as Allen would know because he has luck. He's been stellar. Again, 16 points at the tight end position, only projected for 5. So he basically tripled he did triple his projections. So I thought that was kind of interesting there. Corey seems to just be having wide receiver issues, guys. Landry, Miller, Jackson, and Moore combined for 18 points. So no matter what receiver combo he would have played, they only got 18 points. Barkley dominates again, putting up the best numbers outside the quarterback. And Sean Payton decided to go with Ingram over Kamara, which I think kind of kept his running back situation a little lower than probably Corey would have liked. And once a top dog in this league is now sitting in 5th place, you guys. So things are getting interesting, but that's why I like this matchup, because of what it's done to the playoff picture. Let's go back to Allen for moving forward into the not so good category, the worst matchup of the week. Who do you got slated there?
This one was a tougher decision, even though there were a bunch of duds laid by a lot of teams. I gotta say it was Devil Raiders versus Texas Walker Rangers.
Okay.
He almost doubled his score, and Devil Raiders just didn't really show up at all. So it was like the free bingo, the free space on the bingo card for Texas Walker Rangers. So it's kind of an embarrassing performance, but for Devils Raiders. So that's my down of the week.
Sure. Randy?
I agree with that one as well. Not just because of the wide the wide gap between the scores, but if you look at it closely, first of all, the quarterbacks played very poorly. Aaron Rodgers had a very rare low game, and Andy Dalton hurt his thumb and couldn't finish the game, although he wasn't doing that well to begin with. And then when you also look into it and you see how Texas Walker Rangers really only had two horses doing anything for them. Juju Smith-Schuster with 25 points, Christian McCaffrey with 36. If you combine those points and you combine it in at 61 points, if you take those points away, we're looking at a 69 to 69 kind of game. So, there were tons of players on both sides that weren't pulling their weight. The only difference was that Texas Walker Rangers had two players that just absolutely lit up and they carried the entire team.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, to Alan's point, I think there was a few matchups you probably could have decided here. I really debated putting my matchup on here, but I didn't want to just come across as pissed off because I lost. But yeah, that one was not a good matchup either. But I have to agree with you guys on this one. I just think this is an easy win for Cody, propelling himself up the ladder, so to speak. McCaffrey, what a huge day he had, and we'll discuss that in a few minutes here, but he beat a team that he should have, and now he's sitting in fourth place. And Randy, we've been talking about it all along. He just seems to play the wrong quarterback every week. You put in the different yeah, he gets the win, but you put in the other quarterback. This is not even. It's like what, another 11 to 30, so another 20. It's a 60. Now it's like an 80-point win. Just flipping the quarterbacks there. So
the unfortunate part at least about that one, is that how many GMs in the league would bench Rodgers on a regular basis? I'm sure it's a very difficult decision to make every week. Which one do you play? Do you play the matchups? Do you just ride Rodgers and figure he'll have only one or two bad games a year and the rest will be great? That's got to be some tough decisions for him to make.
Yeah, but I think the point here, if I was Cody, and I mean he won, I didn't, but in this roster, in this matchup, personally, I would have played Cousins because I think the Packers' defense is atrocious, and they're not even playing good football. So I think Cousins would have been a better start, but I mean he still gets to win. I think for Kelly, it's unfortunate now that he's starting to build up the IR roster, as I like to call it. Dalton with his thumb. I mean, curse of Screaming Beavers 3 years ago. Like I posted on that link there, hurt his thumb, knocked me out of the playoffs to Man Bear Pig. And again, it's the same thumb, and then just at the wrong time. I know Kelly wasn't going to be in the playoff picture, but it's never fun to do that at this time of the season. And he's got AP questionable. Gronk finally comes back. Although one touchdown, you take that away, that's 6 points. Plus the yardage. He only finished with 11. So not even a good performance from him. I just think it's an interesting stat here that he had 3 receivers, 1 tight end. They were targeted 18 times, but only caught the ball, 28 times. They only caught the ball 16. So from 4 receiver positions, 1, they're not getting targeted enough, and 2, they're not catching the ball. So I don't understand how you can win with that, right? So I agree with you guys. That was not a good one. So those are kind of the recap of the matchups from Week 12. We want to look back on the Golden Awards here. If it's all right with you guys, I'd like to start off with this one for Player of the Week. I told you, Randy, and Alan, you listened, so you know what I said. Who did I say was going to be the Player of the Week? And I have a different guy here, but I just want to brag a little bit. What did I tell you about Nick Chubb?
Yeah, exactly. We talked about it last week. I talked about how I was kind of proud to have drafted him, but he's not giving me any points. So yeah, I remember talking about that. I
predicted he would have 100 plus yards and 2 touchdowns. He finished with 128 all-purpose and 2 touchdowns.
Oh yeah, they're feeding him the rock a ton ever since the Carlos Hyde trade.
And Clueless, you have him, so I know you're proud of that.
You know what? And I think Nick Chubb is going to be on a lot of championship-winning rosters.
He's a great trade. He's a great waiver. He's a great late draft, as Randy alluded to how this kind of played out to the conversation we're having. But I agree with you. I think if you were smart enough to observe that throughout the earlier part of the year. He's a great stash player for sure, leading into an RB2, potentially RB1, depending on what your team did. However, to put my bragging rights aside, I think player of the week was Christian McCaffrey, hands down. I don't understand how you don't give it to a guy like that, who puts up 237 all-purpose with 2 touchdowns despite the loss. And mind you, he had 125 of that rushing on only 17 carries. So second highest of the year. He had 184 rushing yards in week 3. That's the second game of 30 points this year, and I think he's going to do well this week as well, as they play Tampa Bay, who's given up the 7th most to the running back position. So I'm bragging about Nick Chubb, but for me it was Christian McCaffrey. Alan, who did you point out?
So I've got a little bit more of a dark horse here for my player of the week, and he's a player that's burned me before in previous seasons. Amari Cooper, actually.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah.
He absolutely balled out this week. 9 targets, 8 receptions, 180 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. He's really helped that Dallas Cowboys team since he was traded there. Teams aren't stacking the box against him anymore, and they actually gave Dak a receiving option, and he's done quite well there since he got traded. I think he had that one down week with he only had 30 yards, but other than that, I think he's doing quite well there.
Randy, do you want to add on to Amari Cooper, seeing as how he's one of your hot boys, as you Metros like to call them down in Dallas?
Well, I can just start by saying my man Alan knows what he's talking about, because that's my player of the week too. And of course, as you just mentioned, I'll have a ton of bias on this one, but 180 yards on 8 catches, and that's also the most catches he's had since week 4. 2 huge plays for touchdowns. Of course, Misfits did not get the win, but if you count the fact that Misfits pretty much relies on Deshaun Watson to carry the whole team, the fact that he even got a big performance from someone else really makes it that much more valuable. Actually made the matchup half decent close going into Monday night, and then in the end it ended up half decent close. So maybe part of it was obviously I love my Cowboys, but part of it might have been I just felt like mentioning Misfits actually having a player of the week for once instead of a bust like we usually talk about. So and then on top of it, as Amari Cooper had plenty of points to add on to it.
For sure. No, I think that thing, they're amping him up there. They got a tough matchup this week though, and we'll see how they pan out there. I think every game is crucial now for Dallas, so I think there's no more breathing room or time to get acclimatized with the offense. Cooper's got to get right into it, because now they are fighting for that division lead. They used to be back. Now they put a few wins together here, and they got a tough game against New Orleans here. So we'll see if Cooper continues his hot streak. Randy, I'm going to go right back to you for the bust of the week, please.
All right, my bust of the week might be an easy one, although there were a few candidates as well. But this one I think is a no-brainer. It's Matt Stafford for bottom feeders. We talked about this a couple of times. We knew that he would struggle against the Bears defense, but going 28 for 38 for 236 yards, well, that's not terrible, but 2 interceptions, no touchdowns for a total of 6.44 points, and from your quarterback, that's just a killer. I mean, anything below 20 is killing you, but anything below 10, that's just like you don't stand a chance. And especially with bottom feeders, we're playing a very weakened global warming team without his big 3 Kansas City Chiefs. I talked about this on the last week's podcast about how this might be an opportunity to sneak in a win against a normally almost unbeatable team, but Matt Stafford really hamstrung him as far as being able to put this together. And of course it was on a short week and all that as well, but you can't get 6 points from your quarterbacks. It'll kill you every time.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that. That's not my pick, but I like what you're doing there. And I did talk to Dylan that day, and I I kind of question why would you play Matt Stafford after we've been dishing him or trashing him all these time. He's going up against Chicago's defense, which is good. He hasn't performed, and you have Dak Prescott, who is putting together some wins against a divisional opponent. Now you can't predict point value, but in hindsight, that's a 23-point difference, which could have brought you just shy of like 4 points. And of course, he had a wide receiver on his bench too, who could have outperformed Golden Tate. This was the weak bottom feeders, like you say, Randy, could have snuck away with a win because the KC powerhouse was on the bye for global warming. He was putting a lot of faith on this matchup in Lamar Jackson, who came out to play. But it was it was an interesting one there, I thought. But for me, and then we'll let Alan go. For me, this bust of the week, I got to tell you guys, I was pissed off, and he's coming off my team, Antonio Brown. I just think that guy, in my opinion, cost me the win. And yes, I have another Pittsburgh player on my team who didn't perform. I had a New York Giant who didn't perform, but this is a guy who should perform. He had 9 receptions, 13 targets for only 67 yards. Big Ben just couldn't seem to connect with him. He decided to go to Juju that day, who put up a good day. That's the second time this season Antonio Brown had 0 touchdowns. So, I mean, that's 12 weeks. So, 10 weeks he's had a touchdown or more. Same fantasy points, actually, that he had in week 2, 6.7 when they lost to the Chiefs. Now, I know from my memory, I lost week 2 to Ryan by about 10 points, I think. So just to give you an example, he's cost me 2 wins. This is a high.
This week was especially the worst time for that to happen because your main horse Todd Gurley was on his bye, so it's not like he could get 30 points and make up for it. You needed a good performance from all of your studs you had left, and like you said, Antonio Brown didn't do it for you.
No, and like I say, just one more point here is this is a high production value guy, and he just didn't do that, and I think he should have. But 6.7 from a keeper who's healthy on a good offense needs to get you more than 6.7, especially at this time of the year. But for me, Antonio Brown's the bust. Alan, who do you got?
Well, so you stole my bust of the week because I was going to rip on Antonio Brown too. So I'll pivot because I 100% feel your pain. So I'm going to say my bust of the week, and I'm going to I'll talk about my team. Michael Thomas was my bust of the week.
Okay.
Instead of pivoting off Antonio Brown. 38 reception yards. 6 targets, 4 receptions. At times it's really frustrating because Drew Brees loves to share the ball, and you never know who the ball is going to go to. And against a putrid run defense like they played last week, all they had to do was run the ball, and they beat the Falcons, so they didn't really need to throw the ball that often. And when he was throwing the ball, it wasn't to Michael Thomas.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because he's had some beast games, but like you say, because I've been hearing you comment about him all year, he's been up and down, and it seems like, we watch enough football. To me, one, it's almost like getting to the point in fantasy, you never draft a running back from New England, and you never draft a wide receiver from the Saints, because Sean Payton and Bill Belichick do everything by committee.
Yeah, they don't care about our fantasy teams. They care about winning football games.
For sure.
And when it comes to keeper time, it's like he was one of my keepers. And when we get to the beginning of next draft, it's like, do I keep him? Do I not? It's a really hard decision.
For sure. Yeah, no. So that's some interesting busts, some interesting players. We had a couple matchups. That was week 12. We are getting into our last regular season game. So we're about to predict week 13 as best we can. Randy, I'd like you to kick this off. Who are you predicting to be the final matchup of the week?
Well, I think it'll be Alan's team Clueless versus Texas Walker Rangers. I'm really looking forward to this matchup, not just because it's close, but these are the top 2 guys in the AFC, so they could well be fighting for the second seed in the playoffs, which of course, as we know, the second seed in the playoffs faces the number 7 seed, which is probably someone like me who's kind of struggling a bit a bit up and down, just hanging on to a playoff spot. So I'm also very interested. We've mentioned the weather a couple of times, and just by looking what the Yahoo forecast says next to the players' names there's a lot of red clouds with precipitation coming out of them. So there will be, looks like there's a lot of rain or snow. There will be games in Green Bay, Jacksonville, Tampa Bay, Pittsburgh, New England, Cincinnati, and Carolina that are looking like they're either going to be snow games or rain games, and that makes things real interesting. That, and I also like some of the player matchups, like Andrew Luck versus Aaron Rodgers. I think that's a good matchup at quarterback. You've got good wide receivers in Adams and Thomas versus Diggs and Juju, and of course David Johnson versus Nick Chubb are also playing against each other in this matchup. So some pretty good players to match up. It has some pretty big implications as far as seeding for the playoffs, and at the same time, at least Yahoo is projecting that the game's going to be very close, anyways.
Okay. Before we move on to Alan, Randy, I'm going to put you on the spot, knowing Alan's on the podcast. Who are you projecting to win this game?
Oh, that's a tough one. I actually think Alan's going to pull this one out, even though I think at current the projection is a 4-point win for Texas Walker Rangers. But I think more to what Alan said about Michael Thomas having a bad week. I think he bounces back and has a good game, and I think that's the one that tips it over. Obviously, Diggs on the other side, he could have a good game against New England. Maybe not. I'm hoping my boy Thielen picks up the slack, and then of course he's got Juju to try to counter that as well. Not sure if they'll go back to Antonio Brown. He could easily bounce back and vulture a few receptions away from Juju. So yeah, I think this will be very close, but I'll give the nod to Allen just at the moment.
Okay, Mr. Clueless, your rebuttal.
Well, I think the key matchup here is Nick Chubb and Marlon Mack. I think the rest of this matchup is very close. And Kittle, if Kittle goes off, then it's I don't think I'll be able to take this one, because we've all seen the tight end wasteland this year, and it's been a joke basically. Losing Jack Doyle kind of hurt me, but I'm hoping David Johnson does David Johnson things against Green Bay, and it's gonna be close. I'm not feeling so great, so I'll just leave it at that. But then again, most weeks I'm not feeling so great, and somehow my team pulls it off.
Is this who you picked as the matchup of the week?
Me?
Yeah.
I think so. I was looking at the other matchups, and I think this one's gonna be the closest one, personally.
Man, we are, I'll tell you boys, Randy and I, some weeks we agree, some weeks we are taking our time because, well, we've just known each other for too long and don't like each other. We are cruising right along on this podcast because I'll tell you right now, guys, that's my matchup of the week. We've pretty much agreed on everything, which is weird, but maybe things are aligning that way. For sure, it's you got to pick Texas and Clueless here. Although, before I get into that, just quickly checking. Actually, you know what? I'll save that because it's part of my thing. Sorry about that. No, I think this is a very exciting one. I think, to Randy's point, this is the second and the fourth current seeded teams. They're also 1 and 2 in their respective conference. Allen won Week 6 matchup by 60 points, so you do have a 1-up on him. And I think, despite even if you lose, you should retain second overall as division leader due to points for, because you're 100 up on him as well. So I think you're probably comfortably sitting in the second seed, I would like to guess. But Cody's projected to beat you by 8 when I wrote my notes. It's about 7 now. Things are starting to adjust. For Cody, guys, I think Rodgers is absolutely going to shred Arizona. I think he has no choice but to come out and just throw all days. Now, that bodes well for Allen, having Devontae Adams, but I think Rodgers is going to come out the gates. McCaffrey was the only player on Cody's team that is facing an opponent that gives up the majority of points to the respective position, every other team, he's got a tough matchup. They seem to be giving up the fewest, or definitely within the top 12 fewest to the positions. Diggs is questionable to Randy's point, so that'll bode well for him with Thielen, especially going up against New England in New England. And I got to tell you guys, Randy, I've talked about him before, and you can attest to this, how much I like this kid. It's too bad for Cody how Ridley's just gone off the face of the earth. I'm not sure what's happening with Ridley in Atlanta, but he's got him on the bench currently.
I think the whole line in Atlanta has been really struggling, as I've watched my boy Matt Ryan go down sack after sack after sack every week. So plus I think Julio has picked up his game in the last few weeks, so I think that's where more of the targets are going.
Yeah, and he came out the gate hot, right? And I think if he would have continued that tread, I'm not sure how this matchup would really be, or what Cody's year could have been had his numbers continued. But Cody's put together a nice season here. For Clueless side, I gotta tell you guys, I would have never thought Luck would be putting up the numbers he has. 3,000 yards, 32 touchdowns, 11 receptions. He's tied for second in the NFL in touchdowns. With Cooper Kupp out, I like what I saw with Reynolds against KC. I think he's a stretch player, just like, I think all of us have a wide receiver from that team now. I just like what Goff does, and you gotta like having a guy like that, knowing Kupp's out in your flex against Detroit in a dome. There's a potential he could stretch the field pretty good here, so you gotta feel good with that. I feel for you, and I see that you have Howard on your bench going up against the Giants. I just don't think Howard's going to do anything anyway. I just think he's been taken out of that offensive play calling system. I think Cohen has taken over, and I think that's probably a smart move, although projected for 9, and sometimes you look, what is the ranking slave, as Ruxin used to call it, but you look at it and say, okay, maybe there's potential he could play, but I just don't think so. And in those weeks, he hasn't scored a touchdown in the past 3 weeks he's played, as I'm sure you know, not to rub it in. And in those 3 weeks, he hasn't even combined for 100 yards over 3 games. I think
Bears' offense is actually doing well, so it's not like the whole team sucks.
Nope. So it just goes to show you how he's kind of slowly not found a home in that offense. I think this one's going to be tight, but I hate to break it to you, Alan. I think Cody's going to beat you by about 7 points.
Oh, that's okay.
I just think, looking on paper, I think his matchups are a little bit more friendly than yours, but it's projected to be close. It's exciting, and you know what? You have to remember too, and none of us mentioned this. If Clueless wins and global warming loses, Clueless wins the regular season title.
Yeah.
So there's something to eat at here, and I think it's going to be good. He's playing man bear pig, and nobody thought you could lose to a half man, half bear, half pig, but hey, I did. And you never know what'll happen here. But that's kind of the predictions for week 13. We kind of get into question period now. Alan, I'm not sure if you did have time to prepare a question, or did you?
Yeah, you know what? I had a really slow day at work today, so I was able to think of something.
Randy, are we okay if we let the noob take over?
Sure, why not?
All right, Alan shout it out, and then, if you want to direct it at one of us or both of us, and we'll go from there.
I'm actually really interested in both of your answers to this one.
Okay.
So, obviously we're in the last week of the regular season, coming into the playoffs. Which team are you most afraid to play in the playoffs?
Okay. I guess, Randy, do you mind if I go?
You can go ahead.
It's been like that for a bit now, and he's beaten me twice. I don't want anything to do with global warming, and I just don't want to be a part of that, because he's got the investment into KC, and KC's playing very, very good football right now. And it's not like he has random guys like Sammy Watkins. He's got Tyreek Hill. He has Kareem Hunt. and he has Patrick Mahomes. He has the top dogs that are going on in that realm. He's 9-3 for a reason. Interestingly, though, Melvin Gordon is hurt. Now, how long does that put him out? I'm not sure. But Randy mentioned on the Facebook page, good thing you got depth. He's got Mark Ingram, who gets into that New Orleans system, which is also a high-powered offense. He's got Zach Ertz, who basically might as well be wide receiver money, because he's the only guy I can think of who catches touchdowns from Carson Wentz. Like, he has Jeffrey, who doesn't do anything. Tyler Boyd was part of a trade. So he's built some depth here. He's got New England's defense. I think that's probably, I would say, one of his weaker points. But this guy has averaged 130 points a week. So for me, I think this is a guy I would not want to play. But to be honest with you, we touched base on him a couple times today too. I think Cody's kind of a dark horse here with Texas Walker. I think there's some damage that team can do as well if those players remain hot. I think I have a decent team as well. I think Clueless, you've been second or potentially first for a while. I think you have the depth. Randy's paired together some weeks here, but if you told me who do I want to go out, it's Ryan.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here.
Sure.
Now, if we look at KC's schedule for the playoffs, they've got to play Baltimore, they've got to play the Chargers, and then they've got to play Seattle. Those are three tough defenses that they've got to go up against. And are those, like, on top of that, we talk about the amount of depth he has. So Melvin Gordon's gone down already, so he's down a running back, and it's not this isn't a shot against his team at all or anything. But are you comfortable relying on Mark Ingram for production when week in and week out you really don't know what you're going to get with him? And then Gus Edwards in your flex position, he's been doing well so far, but how long does that production last for?
Well, yeah, and I think to piggyback off your statement here, the Saints play Tampa Bay, Carolina, Pittsburgh. And I think Mark Ingram has the potential to do some damage, especially to Tampa Bay. I think a divisional game they could rack up on Carolina because we've seen it done before. And Pittsburgh seems to probably be the team I think Mark Ingram's production value would go the least. But in that week where Ingram would play Pitt, Gordon and the Chargers play Baltimore. So I know I get what you're saying with the matchups, but KC is 10-1 for a reason, not fantasy related. Like, they are 10-1, and I think they're trying to send a message to the rest of the league, keeping up with the Rams and the Saints. So I don't see KC slowing down just because they're playing who you previously mentioned. But I like that point, and that's something to think of because you usually stop thinking at regular season. But fantasy-wise, going to playoff weeks, but it's still regular season in the NFL, and there's still lots on the line. But again, I'm sticking with my answer, and I'll let Randy say what he has to say. But for me, it's global warming.
Yeah, I'm having a real hard time picking anyone who's more dangerous than global warming. Although you mentioned Texas Walker Rangers, they could be dangerous too. Alan, your team, Clueless, certainly can beat anybody and has a chance to actually finish first in the league. But it's the kind of thing. It's true that where global warming's roster is now, if KC ever had a bad game, he could get knocked out. But we haven't seen any indication that they will ever have a bad game. Baltimore might be the one team that may give them a bad time, but it's the kind of thing. They had a nice late bye week, so if they were banged up at all, they're fresh now. There's no reason to suggest that Andy Reid can't cook up something great with this offense that's already cooking. I don't. Obviously, because he's one of the stronger teams, and because Melvin Gordon's not going to be carrying him much anymore, that may also put a strain on the divisional game. You mentioned they're playing the Chargers, so I don't know if the Chargers defense will be that good. if Melvin Gordon isn't in the lineup to get all those first downs and keep them off the field. Uh, yeah, I can't see anyone more dangerous than global warming at this point. But, like I said, for anyone who's in the playoffs, wishful thinking, maybe Kansas City will have one bad game and all those great trades and good moves and all those draft picks, it'll all be for naught this year. We're hoping.
Well, exactly. So, no, great first question. We appreciate it. You've definitely done your research, young Padawan. Yeah. I'd like to ask you guys a question, then I have another question just for kind of wrap up at the end, but this is my question. Sticking with fantasy, we have 3 spots left in our playoff picture because the top 5 have been declared, or these top 5 will be in the playoffs. We have the 6th seed currently, which is the bottom feeders in Dylan. 7 is Jägermeister's Randy. 8 is Shelley Told Me To Selby. 9, the Old Dirty Bastards Jake. Alan, I'll ask you first. Who's going to get what position? Can you rank those 6, 7, 8 and tell me who misses the cut?
Oh boy. Okay, this is a tougher decision. Now, if you asked me this before Fournette went bananas on Sunday, I'd probably be able to tell you. I know I was really pulling for Shelley Told Me To because he has a bit of a wagon of a team, I think, and actually scares me a lot. But I think it's going to be the bottom feeders in 6th. I think the Jägermeisters are going to finish in 7th, and I think Shelley Told Me To is going to finish 8th. I think it's going to just kind of stay the way it is right now. I can't really. Actually, let me look at the. Yeah, I think it's going to stay that way. I don't see any movement happening.
Okay. Randy? My same question, but to you.
Well, I want to make one comment first. You stole my question. That's exactly what I had written down. But anyways, since I wrote it down, I guess I thought about it a bit too. Yeah, I don't really see bottom feeders falling out. A lot would have to go right, and there are some matchups with these 4 or 5 teams fighting for those last 3 playoff spots that are a little more one-sided. I know I've got misfits right at the perfect time to kind of slip me in, so I don't see myself falling out just because we've talked about how even though Amari Cooper's has been coming on lately, that pretty much makes him a 2 or 3 horse team. But at least that's assuming Philip Lindsay continues to get more touchdowns. He's been a pleasant surprise, but I still think my lineup, even with their matchup, should be able to beat that. So I think I should be able to slip in. I don't know if it'll happen, but wouldn't it be something to see Manbear Pay kind of win the last 2 weeks of the season and slip in the number 8 spot after flirting with the basement of the league for most of the season? That would be something really. That would be something really to see. I like cheering for the underdogs in that, but I don't know if it'll actually happen.
Okay. For me, I did a little bit of research on this one, just in my head, and I'll just carry on here. I think the 6th spot is going to go to Randy, based on what he just said about his matchup. I think he gets the win over Misfits, and he goes to 6 and 7. But you have to remember, Randy has 115 more points than the bottom feeders, okay? So we have to remember that when it comes into play, win-loss. I think Dylan, he finishes in the 7th seed because although there's potential he could beat the Bears, which will affect this the wrong way, I think the Bears have a good matchup here against him currently this week, and I think Dylan goes to the 7th seed. I think the Old Dirty Bastards, they like to Randy's point against the Misfits. Yeah, he's not projected with 120, 130, even 100, but I think he's going up against a depleted Devil Raiders team. He did slip out to the 9th position after last week. He was in the 8th. I think he gets back in because he gets the win. And to favor a few people in your little category of love down there, I'm playing Shelley Told Me To, and if I win, they're going to go to 5 and 8. so which would bump them out had the projections go. So I think right now, currently, I think Selby, although currently in eighth, I think he's the one who misses the mark here. I just think the matchups are in favor for the other guys to secure. So that's kind of who I'm going with. So yeah, no, I just thought we'd look. We kind of got a few solidified. We have some asterisks beside those, and I just wanted to see, hey, what an exciting last week of regular season here when potentially 4 and Randy, I didn't even think a Man Bear Pig could sneak in here.
No, and I was kind of looking as kind of counting as to why bottom feeders didn't get the asterisks beside them, and I guess, well, obviously the number 9 spot is only one game behind, but then I thought, Jerry Manbear Pig, he's only one game behind the 7, 8, and 9 spot, so yeah, there's potential for him there, especially after beating you there. So yeah, he's staying alive in this thing. The old one of the founding members of the league is staying alive.
Yep. So yeah, that was my question. I know, Randy, you said I stole it from you, but do you have another one? Because I do have another question I'd like to relay NFL wise. But if you have another one or can think of one, it's definitely your turn.
I guess not really that I can think offhand. At least I don't want to sit here and just breathe into the microphone for minutes thinking of a question. So if you got an extra one, I'll yield the floor to you.
Sure, sounds good. You can save it for our playoff edition coming up. Guys, just relating to the NFL, Randy, you said we talk about the NFC East a fair bit now, no fault to our own. Both our teams are there. I'm just going to pose a quick question because we're running out of time. Alan, I'll let you go first. Who is your current favorite teams to win the AFC and the NFC? And I just kind of want to know why you're choosing them.
Okay.
Just because, the NFL is kind of getting close to, hey, these teams are eliminated, these teams have locked up, our league's getting into playoffs. Just quickly. No, you don't have to go into too much depth. I'm just trying to, I had a second question prepared.
Okay. So I'm going to be Mr. Unpopular Opinion for the AFC. And I'm not going to pick any of the obvious choices. But I've been watching the Texans really closely this year, and they are something scary. They've won, I think they've won 8 in a row now.
Yeah.
They are absolutely on fire, and that defense is scary. Like, if they had Deshaun Watson last year, and if their defense stayed healthy last year, they would have finished much better than they did. And they are the team to watch this year. Everyone's sleeping on them because everyone talks about Kansas City, the Chargers, and the Patriots. But watch out for the Texans, because I think they're going to surprise some people this year, and I think they're going to come out of the AFC. They have the defense. The issue with Kansas City is that Kansas City doesn't have any defense, and we all know when it comes down to it, defense wins you championships. So,
okay. Who do you like in the NFC?
The NFC is a little bit more obvious. I think New Orleans is going to come out of the NFC.
Okay, Randy.
Yeah.
Well, I would agree actually with Alan on the Saints. It's a very interesting thing that Alan had mentioned about the Texans, especially since that division is garbage. So they're going to get a lot more easier matchups as they get finishing up the division matches towards the end of the season. I mean, maybe the Colts could always surprise them. I believe they took them to overtime earlier this year. But but my AFC pick would have to be the popular pick, and that's the Chiefs. Like I said, I think without Melvin Gordon, the Chiefs have a better chance of beating the Chargers. So I think they'll take that division easy, and I don't see them slowing down against anyone else. And the Saints, as I mentioned before, the same thing. I don't see them beating or say losing to anyone at this point going forward, and they are much more dominant in the in the NFC, there's only a couple teams in the whole conference that could possibly even challenge them.
Okay, interesting. I think for the first time, just quickly here, I think for the first time as the season goes on, I think the Patriots are not going to get a bye. I think they're going to have to play in the wild card round for the first time in a long time, and I don't like them anyway. So I'm just saying that because I want to say it. I think the Chiefs are the AFC. I just don't trust the Steelers to get the job done. I think the Chiefs, although can allow points, I think they can produce points. From the NFC, and I've said it all along, I think the Rams are the NFC team. I like what the Saints are doing, but I think I like what the Rams are doing a little bit more. I think there's potential there to really set up something nice. It's really half one and the other. They're both 10-1. I think that would be a very good divisional or conference championship game. But I think the Rams are going to the Super Bowl, so I like them coming out of there. So Rams and Chiefs for me. So okay, that's kind of it, guys. We don't want to carry on for 8 hours, but we're kind of right on schedule here. So Alan, first, I'll give you the floor. Final thoughts on your first podcast and anything you want to say to everybody.
I just want to say thanks for having me on. It was fun.
Yeah, it's not as easy as maybe as what it sounds when it comes across. There's a little bit of homework. There's a bit of number crunching. We try to piece everything together, keep the flow going. But definitely, if you're more than welcome back. If you want to come back next week, I think we're looking to do. We will know the playoff picture, won't we, Randy? And I think we were talking about maybe doing a special playoff edition, weren't we?
Yeah, oh yeah, that's the plan. Because once the seeding's all set, nobody's worried about standings. It's all about playoffs.
Yeah.
Playoffs.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping I booked my ticket this week.
Well, just to give you guys, sorry, Randy, I'm just going to cut you off. Just to give everybody an update as we go into the last week. Playoffs, if they started today, global warming versus Shelley Told Me To, Texas Walker versus the Bears, Screaming Beavers versus the Bottom Feeders, and Clueless versus Jägermeisters.
There you go, some interesting matchups. At least if it were to end today, but that could all flip flop.
Very interesting. So without that, I think that's it. So good luck this weekend for everybody still trying to fight for one to secure. Alan, good luck. There's $50 on the line. See how this shakes down, right? So
I gotta be cheering for Van Bear pick this weekend.
don't we all? All right, guys, take care and everybody, and good luck. We'll talk to you guys in the playoff edition next week.
Have a good day.
Have a good week, guys.